We're going to open up for questions if anyone has any. We just thought that this morning we would like to make sure that the real context of what we're talking about is apparent to the people of the state and the governor as she looks at either signing or vetoing this bill. And we would also like to ask the governor if she would meet with the people who are standing here before she signs the bill. So right now we'll open it up for anyone's questions.
Well, that was sort of what I wanted to ask some of the survivors as well. Sort of the struggle now shifts from the legislature to the governor's office. And in the last 2 weeks, whenever she's been asked, the governor has reiterated her support for the death penalty. She believes that there are some crimes that are so heinous that they deserve to be punished by death. What will you be doing in terms of trying to get your message to the governor? Will there be letter writing campaigns or rallies? I mean, what if anything, are you planning?
Addressing me?
Anybody up there? Yeah, you're a member of 2 organizations.
We will, as we have done in many other states, organize a letter writing campaign trying to encourage the governor to see that retribution is never the answer. Every one of us who has children, when our children would get into an argument, and one would hit the other, and then the other would hit back, and if we only saw the second one hit, why did you do that? Well, she hit me first. And invariably our response is 2 wrongs don't make a right. And if we think that the death penalty is going to make it right, we're way off base. So we will be organizing letter writing campaigns and trying to contact the governor, encouraging her to sign this bill. We feel that that's the only way for her to go.
You all appear to be residents of Connecticut, is that right? Even though the incidents may have occurred out of state. So then you are uniquely qualified as residents. What are you doing to specifically get in to see her?
I have not personally tried to get in to see her, but I will do that.
Well, as a group, I mean. Gary, you made a request, or representative?
I'm actually going to send a letter to the governor requesting that she meets with the victims' families. So yes, that will be done. I have not done that to this point. I was waiting on the vote last night for this morning.
Right.
I'd like to respond to that if I may.
I got to tell it. I'll call the governor to see that she knows this.
This is our request to Governor Rill to meet with us. Years ago, Governor Rill, during the Michael Ross case, was quoted as saying that she spent a sleepless night as she lay in bed and considered her own children and the possibility that her children may have met the same fate that the victims of Michael Ross met. That must have been a terrible night for her. We all try to imagine the experience of the Ross victims, of the Pettit victims, and as we do that, it stimulates in us a deep feeling of allegiance to those victims. And we consider, she said, I think, well, I couldn't imagine if that had been my own children. I would like to ask Governor Rill to take the weekend to search her soul, to pray, and to try to put down her own feelings in order to consider a rational decision about keeping the death penalty in Connecticut.
I would like to add that given the opportunity to speak with Governor Rill, I would like to express to her that you never know what someone is going through unless you walk in their shoes. And that's why support groups are so effective and therapeutic. And I think that from a pragmatic viewpoint, it may look like a solution, but unless you walk in these shoes, you really have no idea of the anguish and the pain and even despair that can result. Given that, I'd like to express to her how that's not a solution. Again, I can only say there's no closure for situations like this. There's only a sense of finality, and the death sentence is not that sense of finality that would really bring any comfort, or I don't even believe any justice to the situation.
I just apologize for asking a question and leaving the room, but we have a reporter with the governor right now. I wanted to make sure that that question was asked.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so letter writing campaigns, you gonna, anything else besides that being anticipated?
Well, I think what we're doing right now is a major part of what we want to do. There's many members of the media here, written and visual, and the letter writing campaign. And I think the governor will get the message that the family members want to meet with her, and then it is, of course, her choice whether she wants to meet with them or not. But I think it's incumbent upon her, if she's going to say that she thinks that this is about justice, especially because of the family members that are living, then I think it's incumbent upon her to provide them with the opportunity to speak with her.
And if anybody, I mean, when we were told that the vote was coming, I was not, you know, after having been up here for 10 years or so and seen some of these debates, was anybody surprised by the outcomes of the votes in either the House or the Senate?
Oh, yeah. Delighted.
Hi, I'm Ben Jones, the Executive Director for the Connecticut Network to Abolish the Death Penalty. And just to address these questions on what we're doing, the national groups are interested in what's going on. National leaders are working to contact the governor. And this is, you know, national resources from various national groups are going into this. Amnesty International, Equal Justice USA, the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. So this is...
So you're aware of the structure or the process here, that it'll take, because it wasn't an e-cert bill, was it, Gary?
No.
It'll take a week or two before she even gets it. And then she has how many business days after that? After she gets it, is it 12 or 10? So it could be a month before she, so I assume you took that into consideration on your lobbying effort.
Right.
I would just like to ask any of the victims, there are other victims' families on the other side of this issue. What would you say to them to convince them to see your point of view? If anyone would like to, what would you say to them to help change their minds?
I would say that the judicial system pulls out a brass ring, and it's not real. That if you go down that path, you go away from the path of healing. But we pull people in, and it really does them a great disservice.
Would that specifically be directed, because Dr. Pettit came up here and testified before the Judiciary Committee.
Yes.
That they should not pass
Yes.
it, and then they passed it.
Dr. Pettit's wife and children were murdered not even 2 years ago. This is a long process. There is a long way that Dr. Pettit will have to travel, but I believe that he is in the initial stages of this process, and that to move through means being able to put down the feelings of rage and outrage and grief and go forward. So I think Dr. Pettit's in the early stages of this, and this is what it looks like. All of us have been there. All of us have been consumed by a desire for vengeance and by great feelings of outrage. And when you lose a family member, the first thing you want to do is strike back.
Reverend Edward, you, I think, know that Dr. Pettit's father-in-law is a clergy member of a church that is opposed to the death penalty.
That
And
is
I
correct.
believe he's a member of the same church, I think.
Richard Hawk is a retired United Methodist pastor, and
Would you reach out to him to try to...
I've already been in contact with him, And traditionally, he and his wife have worked against the death penalty. At this time, I believe they're trying to keep the family together, so they're not speaking out very much on this. But the important thing is that we believe that Dr. Pettit will be able to move on toward healing, not through the death penalty, but through support. I have talked with him, others have talked with him. Dr. Pettit, I know his rage is real, but if we can look at another one, Bud Welch, whose daughter was killed in the Oklahoma City bombing, one of the most horrific events this nation has seen on its soil. For a year, he lived with extreme rage, and he said if he could have gotten his hands on Timothy McVeigh, he personally would have throttled him. He's thankful that the government would not let him get to McVeigh, and eventually he came to the point where he said the death penalty does not bring back his daughter, it does not serve as a deterrent, it does not cost less money, it costs more in fact. The McVeigh trial and all of the security and his execution cost the federal government something like $50 million. So none of those arguments stand up. He said the only thing that you can say for the death penalty is that it satisfies the desire for vengeance. And then Bud adds, when it comes right down to it, it was vengeance that killed my daughter. For Timothy McVeigh was getting even with the federal government for Waco, Texas. And Bud said, we've got to stop that cycle of vengeance.
Well, my point was that presumably if Dr. Pettit was willing to come up here and testify in public, that he may also make a request to talk to the government.
There are those who are in the early stages of their anger who would, because they're waiting for the death penalty, would say, I want to see the death penalty carried out. But those of us who have moved on beyond that realize that it doesn't make a difference in terms of our grief. It doesn't give us closure.
Yeah, but wouldn't you allow that somebody could go through this process and still be a supporter of the death penalty? I mean, not everybody believes the same, correct? I mean,
That's absolutely right. But we're all in different stages. And
well, I'm just saying, couldn't somebody be a supporter of the death penalty before this happened and during their journey as you guys are describing? I mean,
I've known many people who were supporters of the death penalty. And when something like this happened, they've continued to support it, and eventually they moved on and discovered that the death penalty doesn't provide the answers that they were seeking. I have not known anybody who has been a family member of a victim who has moved from opposition to the death penalty and initially after the event and moved to a proponent of the death penalty. I'm convinced that the proper direction of movement is toward reconciliation, toward healing of individuals and of society. We live under a system of retributive justice. Let's get even with anybody for what they do. And I'm convinced that the newer movement of restorative justice, trying to bring healing, is the way that all of us in society are going to heal and grow.
Other questions? If not, we will call this to an end. Thanks.